Shalom. All praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Bahashim Yahushua, Bahashim Machakodash. Double honors to the apostles of GMS that give us his truth and all the spirituality, and salutations to all that I can push in this word throughout the four corners of the earth as sincerity and the truth. I'm the brother Yahusap, and this lesson will be touching World War III. And in the news, you have Trump and his administration threatening Iran in the midst of these different meetings they're having about a potential nuclear deal, which now are suspended, due to all the situation that's going on, but this shows you right here with everything that's going on that we're in a time of prophecy, because Ezekiel, the 38th chapter, tells you about everything we see happening, and many other scriptures, which is what I'm about to get into, Lord's will. So I have this article here from apnews.com, and it reads, Trump threatens sanctions against buyers of Iranian oil after U.S.-Iran nuclear talks are postponed. So, we been knew this was going to happen, because the scriptures say that when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction is going to come upon them. So, even though they was having all these different peace talks, it's been, they had three, the past 3 weeks, every Saturday they've had one, except tomorrow, which is suspended due to, everything that's happening. You got the Israelis potentially being behind the attack on the Iranian port, which killed, hundreds of people, some to that effect. Right, and Iran, basically, they got their back against the wall. Now, Esau's pushing their buttons on top of this, these new sanctions that Trump is trying to put against their buyers, the buyers of the oil, which is responsible for their economy. So that's gonna cause a lot of economic turmoil, which is pretty much a call for war. So it reads, Trump threatens sanctions against buyers of Iranian oil after U.S.-Iran nuclear talks are postponed. It says President Donald Trump on Thursday threatened sanctions on anyone who buys Iranian oil, a warning that came after planned talks over Tehran's rapidly advancing nuclear program were postponed. Trump wrote on social media, all purchases of Iranian oil or petrochemical products must stop now. He said any country or person who buys those products from Iran would not be able to do business with the United States in any way, shape, or form. It was unclear how Trump would implement such a ban, as he threatened to levy secondary sanctions on nations that import Iranian oil. But his statement risks further escalation tensions with China, Iran's leading customer, at a time when the relationship is very strained over the U.S. president's tariffs. So, Trump pretty much is using Iran to also go at China, because America got beef with China due to the fact that China is surpassing them in technology and in economy. They have all these different deals with these other countries, trade deals. They're building infrastructure for other countries. They got different relationships that they're building, because, they think that they're next. They think that they're the next top dogs on the block, that, they're going to dethrone Babylon, but that's a delusion, because the scriptures tell you that Israel got next. Esau's the end of the world, not Moab, but Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth, So it says, that's it on that. So now let's go to what the Secretary of State, XF. Yep, it says Hegseth. It says Hegseth threatens Iran over Houthi support. You will pay the consequence. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth threatened Iran over support for Yemen's Houthi militants, telling the country that it will pay the consequences. Message to Iran: we see your lethal support to the Houthis. We know exactly what you are doing. You know very well what the U.S. military is capable of. You were warned. You will pay the consequence at the time and place of our choosing. the defense secretary, wrote in a post on social media platform X late Wednesday. So, hey man, they've been saying that Iran will be bombed. This is what Trump has been saying for weeks. So, this was already in the agenda. When you read, what is it? Karl? No, not Karl Marx. Damn, I always forget this devil name. Damn, I forgot this devil name. I keep forgetting it. But he's a very famous Satanist that basically spoke about Albert Pike. That's his name. About the 3 world wars and how World War III would basically happen between taking advantage of the Jews in the Muslim world, which Iran is part of the Muslim world. They're not Ishmaelites, they're not Arabs, they're Elamites, but they're part of their Muslim world, and they're bound by religion, even though you got different factions, the Shias and the Sunnis. I believe Iran is Shias or something like that, and I believe the Houthis as well, so they got different factions that they control throughout the Middle East, which the U.S. pretty much want to take down, which is why Trump escalated his campaign against the Houthi rebels. And the Houthis are, kicking Babylon's ass, For the past 6-7 weeks, they spent over, close to $1.5 billion just fighting some rebels. Lost a $80 million aircraft in the sea, they're losing, the Reaper drones, that's responsible for satellites, UAV reconnaissance, where they're watching everything that's going on the ground, They took down a lot of Esau's equipments. So if you struggling against the Houthi rebels, what makes you think you're going to conquer Iran? Iran is a power state, Iran is probably the most powerful country in the Middle East, as far as military is concerned, and it's a rough terrain. You can't, just conquer Iran militarily, and you can't even really drop bombs on them because they have air defense system. And not only that, Iran is backed by Russia. They already have a treaty saying that if you attack Iran, you basically attack Russia and China as well. So that's why you see Trump going after China, by, basically putting secondary sanctions on anybody buying Iranian oil. And China's the #1 customer. And Trump also just made a deal with Zelensky, even though he been, talking all that talk about, how he likes Putin. He's going to work a deal with Ukraine and Russia. Well, guess what? He just signed a deal with Zelensky to keep supplying them with ammunition and new equipment. So, hey, man, basically, we in the times of war, man. The scriptures say we're not in a time of peace, man. We're in a time of war. So, get the blue letter. This is Revelation chapter 16, verse 16. It says, and he gathered them together into a place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon, which in the Hebrew is Armageddon. Let's get that. Armageddon. In the Greek, when you go into the definition, the root word, as you can see, is, hold on, etymology, is my God one. Slakia. It says place of crowds, right? Which is the valley of decision spoken of in the book of Joel, right? And let me see. Okay. It's like, yep. And he gathered them together into a Hebrew place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon, which is over there in the valley of Jehoshaphat. This is Joel chapter 3, verse 1. It says, "For behold, in those days and in that time, when I will bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat," which, let's go into that word, Jehoshaphat, and it is Yahweh Shaphat, which means Yahweh has judged. Yahweh, and then Shaphat means judge, right? Or judgment. So the valley of Yahweh Shaphat is the valley of decision over there in the Middle East. It says, "And will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage." It's like, let me get out of this. It says, "I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land." And that's what happened. The transatlantic slave trade and the trans-Saharan slave trade. And even, the Romans sold us in captivity. And if you go back into any ancient empire, they had the Israelites in captivity. So, but this is specifically going into the transatlantic slave trade. So they scattered us, which was a fulfillment of the curses in Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter. As a curse, the Lord said he would scatter us among all people by the way of captivity. It says, "and parted my land," and that's what they did. They divided the land of the Most High among themselves. You have, Gaza, where you got those Palestinian Arabs, which don't belong in the Holy Land. They're heathens, just like those people calling themselves Israelis. They're not the chosen people, and they don't belong in the Holy Land, right? But they parted it among themselves, where they have their own settlements, right? And in the Arabs, in one spot, they got the Ethiopians living in their portions. So all the heathens are having their way with the Lord's Holy Land. That's the most coveted land in the world, because all the heathens know its history and how blessed and holy the land is, how it's the Most High's favorite land. So they parted the land, right? And who parted the land? Matter of fact, let's get that. Ezekiel. This is Ezekiel chapter 36, verse 5. It says, "Therefore, thus saith the Lord, Yahweh Bashim Yahshua power, surely in the fire of my jealousy have I spoken against the residue of the heathen and against all Idumea." Idumea is Edom. Edom is Esau. Edom is the so-called white man. So the Lord said the residue of the heathen and against all Idumea. So you got Esau, Edom, the Arabs, and all the other heathens that live in the land of Israel. It says, "which have appointed my land into their possession with the joy of all their heart, with despiteful minds to cast it out for a prey." And that's what they did. They appointed the land of the Lord into their possession, right? By the way of the Balfour Declaration, where Britain, with the Rothschilds, pretty much got sanctioned for Israel to be given to the Jewish people, right? And, now, they have the Greater Israel Project, which it's been in the works and the plans, where they planning on taking over the lands that the Lord promised unto Abraham and his seed, which that promise is to us, man. The land that they have over there now is not even the full blessing, right? Matter of fact, let's see, Abraham. Promise land. Let's see. Okay, yeah, this is more like it. Yep. So all these lands, the people that live in Egypt, we got a portion of Egypt too, right? We have Israel, we have, all that region, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, parts of Saudi Arabia. That's all ours, man. That belongs to the children of Israel. And even, I think, a little portion of Turkey as well. right? All of that belongs to the children of Israel, which is why Israel has this project now. See, there we go. All of this. Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Syria, all those lands belong to the children of Israel, So all the heathens living in those lands, they don't belong there. When we go back to our holy land, they're going to have to get up out of there, right? So, okay, so we finished with that. Now let's go back to Joel chapter 3. And I'm going to jump down to verse 9. It says, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war. Wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. And that's what's happening. All the nations are gearing for World War III. China is ready. They already prepped up their military. And, for decades, they geared their military strategies around destroying American military, And Russia, they're ready. North Korea, they're ready. They got deals with Russia. All these different countries are making deals with Russia because they see what's coming down the pipe, and they're trying to dethrone Babylon. They're trying to get away from, I wouldn't say Esau's influence, because the Russians are influenced, are Edomites as well, but they're trying to get away from Western influence, American economy, right? Which is why they're all joining the BRICS corporation, the BRICS organization, which is where nations will be able to bypass American payment system, to do trade among themselves, to use their own currencies. And Esau can't have that. That's why Donald Trump, when he was campaigning, he said he's going to destroy the BRICS. And he said, the BRICS is no more when he took power. But he just straight up capping, because the BRICS is still going strong, right? But these nations, they're ready for war. Wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. That's right. So plowshares into swords, meaning taking your instruments of agriculture and turning it into weaponry, meaning the budget you have towards other sectors of government, turn it into weaponry, right? Turn it into your weapon system. You get ready for war. Let the weak say, I am strong. You had weak nations now boasting. North Korea at one point was weak, but now they got the backing of Russia, and they just unveiled their own, either aircraft carrier or destroyer, a Navy destroyer ship. And, they got their hands on ballistic missiles and nuclear technology. Iran at one point, they was weak, but now they got their hands on nuclear technology and over 5,000 missiles, So the weak is saying, I'm strong. And the nations that's still weak now, they're going to get supplied by Russia along with China with weaponry, to defend themselves. It says, assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Fear to cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord. That's right. So the Lord is going to cause his mighty ones, which is the angels, to come down over there in that region, as World War III is taking place. Because best believe, as it's taking place, even though, it's going to be a buildup, but it's going to be a quick escalation. But while it's happening, you're going to have chariots hovering over the Middle East, pop up here and there until the missiles come. And that's when Yahushua is going to come with the host of heaven, because in every major wars in history, there's been chariot sightings, World War I, World War II, and so on and so forth. So it says, still the cause thy mighty wants to come down, O Lord. Let the heathen be awakened and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. So the Most High is getting ready to judge your nations for what you did to his people, for, the oppression, the slavery, the genocide, that we suffer to this day. It says, put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come get you down, for the press is full. The fats overflow, for their wickedness is great. That's right. So put ye in the sickle. That's going to be Yahushua, I think Revelation, it might be the 14th chapter, goes into Yahushua basically having a sickle, and the angel told him to thrust in the sickle and reap, So put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. The harvest is the people, the billions of souls that's going to be on the planet Earth, you know, when Yahushua returns, you know, starting with those armies over there in the Middle East. You know, they're going to be destroyed by, hey, man, the multitudes that's going to be over there, it's going to be probably in the hundreds of millions of bodies throughout the Middle East, you know. So, you know, that's a lot of people, man. The fats overflow. The press is full. It's going to overflow with blood. Multitudes in the valley of decision, for the day of the Lord Yahweh Shemashah is near in the valley of decision, which is the Middle East. It says the sun shall be turned into darkness and the stars shall withdraw their shining. It's just going into what? The nuclear destruction. You know, the nuclear winter is going to block out the skies. And the Lord shall roll out of Zion and utter his voice from Jerusalem, which is Yahushua when he returns. The scriptures say he's going to cry like a travailing woman. You know, he's going to have that war shout. And the heavens and the earth shall shake. Yeah, because the scriptures say Yahushua is coming to shake not the earth only, but the heavens also. You know, so that's going to be by the way of the missiles and Yahushua's aura and the chariots, you know, aura, you know, shooting laser beams on this earth and mainly on Babylon, right? Which is going to cause the earth to rush to and fro like a drunkard. You know, it says, the Lord will be the hope of his people and the strength of the children of Israel. Yeah, because the elect is going to call upon his holy name, right? And those are going to be the ones to receive salvation. You know, the Lord said he's going to bring the third part through the fire and they're going to call upon his name and he will hear them, man. So to receive salvation, you got to serve Yahweh Shemashah in sincerity and in truth and have those names, man. You know, you can't claim to keep the laws, statutes, and commandments, you know, and not call upon the name. You know, that makes all your righteousness become as filthiness, because the first commandment is to not have any other gods besides the Most High and to not take his name in vain. You know, so you got camps that do that, man. You know, IUIC, you know, some other camps call them Ahaya, Yeshaya, Most High, Christ bless, you know, all that BS, man. Well, guess what? When the missiles come down, Yahushua is not going to hear you, man. Right? You're going to say, Lord, Lord, we prophesied in your name. But you're going to say, depart from me, man. He ain't never know you. Right? So, let me get Ezekiel chapter 38. This is Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 2. It says, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal, and prophesy against them. And that's going into Vladimir Putin. You know, he's the chief prince of Gog and Magog, which is over there in Russia. So it says, and say, thus saith the Lord Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua power, behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal. And I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth in all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. And that's going into all the different weaponry that they're going to be supplying the other nations with. And even if they don't fully stack them up with weaponry, they could just share the technology that they have on, you know, how they can make them. You know, just like they did with Iran and China as well. You see, so the armor and weaponry and all of that, that's going into the tanks, missiles, aircrafts, you know, different things. Because they're already doing it with a lot of countries around the world, you know. But, you know, we're coming into World War III, so all the nations are going to have a necessity for arms. Needs for ammunitions to protect their countries, to protect their borders, you know, to help their allies, you know. So Russia's going to be that supplier. It says Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them. Persia is Iran. Ethiopia is that region over there, East Africa, because it's not just the country of Ethiopia, right? Because Ethiopia in ancient times was like, you know, majority really of East Africa. You know, Eritrea, you know, Somalia, right? You know, they're the same people, man. So Russia has deals with the actual country of Ethiopia, right? But you're gonna have they're gonna have deals all throughout Africa, because Russia is pretty much set up as the counter to Western power. And it says all of them with shield and helmet. Gomer and all his bands, the house of Gomer of the north quarters, and all his bands, and many people with thee. And that's going into Turkey. Turkey is allies with NATO, but they have a relationship with Russia, as well as Iran, which is why Turkey said if Israel attacks Iran, that they will attack Israel and invade it within 72 hours, he said, the president, So Gomer is going to be part of that. It says, be thou prepared and prepare for thyself, thou and all the company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. Yeah, so Russia is going to be their protector. It says, after many days thou shalt be visited, and the latter years thou shalt come into the land that is brought back from the sword, and is gathered out of many people, against the mountains of Israel, which have been always waste, but it is but forth out of the nations, and they shall dwell safely, all of them. So the land brought back from the sword is Israel. So Russia is going to destroy Israel, pursuing the prophecy. It says, thou shalt ascend and come like a storm, thou shalt be like a cloud to cover the land, thou and all thy bands, and many people with thee. Let me keep going down. I'm gonna jump down to, let's see. Let's see. This is about the evil thought. Oh yeah, there you go. Yep. This is Ezekiel 38, verse 10. It says, thus saith the Lord Yahweh Shem Shah, it shall come to pass that at the same time shall things come into thy mind, and thou shalt think an evil thought. Yeah, that evil thought is going to be the nuclear missile, pushing a button, giving the order to his military men to shoot the missiles from those silos, from those land vehicles, from the submarines, from the warships, from space, because they're working on that now, Russia and China, to put weaponry in space. So, hey man, this thing is gonna be epic, right? Yeah, and I'm gonna finish off with, I'm gonna start at 18. It says, and it shall come to pass at the same time when Gog shall come into the land of Israel, saith the Lord Yahweh Shem Shah power, that my fury shall come up in my face, for in my jealousy and in the fire of my wrath have I spoken. Surely in that day there shall be a great shaking in the land of Israel, which is going into the missiles, destroying Israel, wiping them off the face of the earth. And Iran alone has enough military capability, enough missiles to flatten the whole land of Israel, over 5,000, so that the fishes of the sea and the fowls of the heaven and the beasts of the field and all creeping things that creep upon the earth and all the men that are upon the face of the earth shall shake at my presence, and the mountains shall be thrown down, and the steep places shall fall, and every wall shall fall to the ground. That's right. So World War III will be the end of this age. Everything, all the infrastructure will be destroyed, because the earth is going to reel to and fro like a drunkard, right? So it says, and I will call for a sword against him throughout all my mountains, saith the Lord. Every man's sword shall be against his brother. That's right. So Edomites versus Edomites, Elam versus Elam, Moab versus Moab. It's all types of divisions that's going to be when Yahweh shall return. It says, and I will plead against him with pestilence and with blood, and I will rain upon him and upon his bands and upon the many people that are with him, and overflowing rain and great hailstones, fire and brimstone. Yeah, so that's going into Russia and their allies being hit with missiles, with nukes from Babylon the Great, as well as Israel and, America's allies. Thus will I magnify myself and sanctify myself, and I will be known in the eyes of many nations, and they shall know that I am the Lord, Yahweh Shem Shah. That's right. So that's when the world is going to know who the Most High is. just like how the world knew who the Most High was after he took out Egypt. So the whole world will be knowing in that day who Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahshua is. So with that, I hope this was edifying. I'm going to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahshua, Ba'ashim Chakodash. Peace and double honors to the apostles and elders of GMS that give us his truth and all the spirituality, and salutations to all y'all can push this word throughout the four corners of the earth. Shalom.